okay, that was better. Not to say that season 4 wasn't good, it was, but here it felt like at least there were a couple of moments where things were just better for at least some of the cast, and it has nothing to do with the fact that it was summer. Season 1 was a winter season, and I enjoyed that a lot more than season 4 on a personal level. On a critique wise, I'll say it again, season 4 was good, but this season, without having to deal with complex dynamics such as like not having to deal with Kevin and Mickey and the hooker situations in the bar, and instead Kevin and Veronica dealing with the hooker basically in their own house, much simpler story, and then shifting Kevin and Veronica's story from trying what they can to have the kids and the financial situation to much more emotional bit about baby time versus our time. I'm sure I'm going to have to deal with that if I ever have kids, that kind of a thing. That was better. It just felt a little more relatable and that kind of thing. And it's something that they've never had to really think about before. Just, are we still us? Think about it. That's deep. And then Fiona, with her and that not exact love triangle, but complex love dynamic between her and Gus, and then Sean, yeah, that was more interesting to watch than what was going on last season, because both of them have the pros and cons. Gus, really nice guy, but maybe a little bit reserved when it comes to emotional managing things, whereas Sean, who I think is a different boss than what was being shown at the end of season 4, although granted, if you want to do a little bit of headcanon, it could be that the season 4 boss that they showed was the actual true owner of the place, and Sean is the boss that you see just all the time. That could be. And you know how he is super good with the emotions bit, even though he himself is a messed up guy who knows that it'll only take one or two things to happen correctly where I go right back. Because, yeah, I did notice when they first found Jackie that he seemed to be just a little bit reserved, but that was because he was staring at the syringe going, I wonder if there's any left. Whew. But there were moments where you felt like she was handling things, and then later in the season you realize she just made a mess of things again, even though she did get rid of Jimmy, which is kind of good because they did give him proper closure, but with no explanation as to what happened. Well, that's not entirely true, but it's just throwaway lines as to what happened to him. Sorry. But yeah, that closure, it's both a little better, but it did mess up Fiona, even though that's the whole point of all of her storylines. She does have her mind in the right place at the beginning, but then keeps meeting the wrong people for one reason or another. And I'm glad that the job bit was working out for her, but owing to the fact that now she's trying to pursue Sean at the end, yeah. I don't think that's going to work. Then the romantic situations for the other 4 kids, because it's somewhat similar, except for Carl, who gets thrown in jail, because like they say it's juvie. He's there with fully grown people. That's not really juvie if you ask me, but what do I know about juvie, right? I've never been there and can't anymore. I'm 30. It's nice to how they attack it in different ways, but it doesn't feel super repetitive, because, I mean, like, Ian and Mickey, it's just trying to move along in the next bit of their relationship, where Mickey knows that Ian has problems, but Ian accuses him of, like, attacking it the wrong way. And then, Debbie, confused as to why things don't seem to be happening for her the way that they were happening to all the other family members when they were of slightly similar age to her. How she totally goes after Matt the wrong way, then meets, pretty sure it's Derek. Because, yeah, I was right in what I said in season 1. They are definitely expanding the show now, although it's not as bad as it could be, but it's almost there. So I gotta really pay attention here. How she goes out to Derek, then makes the silly mistake of just being too eager to have it happen, and then she ends up with the baby bit, and then she's totally misguided. I mean, like, sure, they didn't show the thing, but come on. Yeah, if she wasn't pregnant, she just would have shrugged. Yeah. Okay, sorry, I don't know why my arm is trembling so much. I don't think there's anything I can do about that. And then, Lip. Dude. What is going on? I mean, like, not being interested in Mandy, that makes sense after what she did to Karen, and you yourself got the attitude that there wasn't really anything you could do as long as you said, I love you back, but problem was he didn't love her. You could tell. He felt something towards her, but it wasn't love. Amanda, well, they did arguably the worst thing that they could do, and then they took a break from each other, and then he just found that he didn't care about her anymore, which is unfortunate. Is it a little uncharacteristic of her to say that she was in love with him? Yeah, but at the same time, things like that could happen without knowing. I mean, like, both of my real-life crushes. They happened without me planning to, and by the time that I realized I had a crush on them, I'd known them for quite some time. Yeah. It's a complex thing, but that relationship with that professor, that's so not going to work. And it's not just because she's married. It's the fact that she is, just doing things that aren't normal. Because one moment she's having sex with Liv while her husband is watching, and then she's introducing him to some guy in robotics, or is it aerospace? It's one of those two fields. It doesn't make sense. Are you the sexual side, the advisory side? Just what are you? What? There's no way that this is going to last. Now, is she in love with Lip? No. Absolutely not. But he himself, Lip, says at the end of the season that he's falling in love with her. That's going to cause problems. Totally. But what doesn't on this show? And then that financial aid storyline with him. Yes, it's the Deus Ex Machina situation, but things like that can occasionally happen, Because this isn't the same thing, but first English class that I took in college, I ended up with an A in that class, but here's the thing. I didn't turn in one of the papers for that class, and during the last week, I didn't show up that week at all because while the teacher had said, I'm trying to get a sub for you guys, she never fully committed to saying that she had gotten one. She was being extremely sketchy as to what was going to happen that last week. So I didn't show up at all for that last week, and there was definitely something that we were supposed to turn in that I didn't. Mathematically, it should have been impossible for me to get an A. Passing the class, okay, maybe that was still possible, I don't remember now, but I definitely should not have had an A. Absolutely no chance. But when I told my parents about it, they're like, well, is it your fault that this grade is incorrect, if indeed it's incorrect? And I'm like, no. And they're like, right. Worst case scenario, they'll tell you that they gave you that grade in error, and they might even refund you the money back because this is community college. Back where I lived, community college was super cheap. So there you go. things like that will occasionally happen to your benefit. Uh, then let's talk about Frank and then all the main people that he's interacting with. That bit with Sheila versus Sammy, well, I mean, like, come on. No, those two have so many differences, and they both are needy in their own way. I don't blame Frank for snapping and then blowing up Sheila's house. The whole time I was looking at that thing with the propane, I'm like, oh god, that is one big accident totally waiting to happen, and I was right. Oh man, was I right. So, that's probably the end of Sheila, but what else could they really have done with her? She lost everyone important in her life except for Frank, and that's the straw that broke the camel's back, so she gets out of there. Makes sense. Sammy, I'm glad that they brought her back for this, but it's not that, what they did with her was bad. The only thing that I didn't like was her reappearing right at the end and trying to shoot Mickey. I honestly think it would have been a little better if that hadn't happened, even though the end result of her running down an alleyway after Mickey, who isn't as concerned as he probably should be, with the police going after them, it's not that much different than her just waking up in a box yelling, "Let me out!" So whatever they do with her, that's fine. Carl ending up in there, honestly, it feels natural, but at the same time, I can't help but think maybe they just couldn't think of anything else to do with him. So I feel a little bad for the actor playing him for having a significantly reduced role. And then Frank and all of his other isms throughout the season. It's interesting how they've changed his character, where you say that he's messed up, but he's having more moments where you're actually listening to him. And it's not so much that he's growing on you, it's just that he's changed just enough that you realize he actually has some good points, because that whole bit where he's complaining about the lesbians taking over, and then how as the season goes along, well, the first half, they got rid of that story arc after Mickey and Ian shot the coffee thing to places, where you realize that he's actually more correct than he isn't. Whoa. And then Bianca. Okay, he was totally a bad influence on her, but at the same time, he did kind of open her up and made her content with her end-of-life decision. Not in the best way, but maybe not in the worst, because could she have, in theory, saved herself? I think she could have, but the odds definitely were against her. I remember when Alex Trebek got cancer. I'm like, oh man, that sucks. 1 year later, he admits that he's almost done with his bit of chemo and that the cancer appears to be in pretty good remission, but I'm like, I don't know, dude. Every time I've heard a big story about somebody with bad cancer, this exact event happens, then a few months later it always comes back, and that's the wave of cancer that gets them. Unfortunately, I was right. So, yeah, but some can argue that it's better to just live life normally than keep going to the hospital and fighting it every day of your life. I don't know. But there's no way that he gave the letters to her family. No way. Right, well, I think that just about sums up my thoughts on this season. It was better than last season, which I'm glad of, and I'm looking forward to them continuing this. Oh, and Kevin's new haircut. As long as it's not bald down to the root, I'm okay with it. He can pull off the short hair very well, actually.